Mr. Calvin Johnson. How are you?
I'm doing good. All right, Dame.
Crazy ride.
Yeah, it's been a good year. I'm pretty bored right now. I can get into some of that, but
Well, you and I were joking about that over drinks.
yeah.
Like, what do you call yourself when you're the owner of a company who's sold, right? Because you're not unemployed.
Yeah, I hate when people are saying, "Oh, you're all retired" and stuff like that. I'm like 52, so 53. Well, how old am I? Shit, I don't even know what day of the week it is. And I was asking my wife, like, "What day is it? It's the weekend
Yeah,
already. Holy
I
shit!"
know. You're not even a responsible adult. Your wife manages your life, as does mine. And you've built a company, sold a company, and you don't know what day it is.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're like the rest of
my
us.
18-year-old just got a job, so he's the only one in the house working, and he's like rubbing it in. He's like, "You guys sleep in now." So
Well, remember what I said, because I've sold my company a couple times now, as you know, because you've been with me
yeah,
for those. I think the word is untethered.
I like that.
It's not
Yeah,
unemployed. You're just untethered.
yeah. What's my next project? Things like
Yeah.
that. You got to explain yourself even more now to people. So
Oh yeah. Like how? Well, Calvin, let's do that. But before we
yeah,
do that, let's tell people who you are, because Calvin, people on this show, they're all construction business owners.
yeah,
They're running great businesses, doing great work that they're proud of. They're building teams to help them deliver that great work. And some of them are thinking about selling one day, as you've just done. And boy, you rung the bell really nicely. But
yeah.
tell us who you are. Tell us a little bit about your background and why you're here talking to us.
Calvin Johnson. So serial entrepreneur. I started and sold my first company to my partners actually when I was like 20. But long story short, the kind of the core business I've had, an e-commerce company over many years. We racked up about 290 million in sales and about 1.3 million orders. I started the process. I'll get into some of these tips. Man, did I learn a lot. And I thought about selling and moving on pre-COVID. And
Yeah.
I kind of burned up a lot of time because I didn't really know what I was doing. And if I was able to sell pre-COVID, I probably would have got even more. But luckily, I was able to get the deal done in June this past year to a Fortune 500 company, and I learned a ton.
Yeah.
So that hopefully I could share that. And so outside of that, through our company, we had a charity. So I'm doing some charity work in Nicaragua, and actually have some other past clients that loved what I did with the charity that were construction companies. One is an example of about a $20 million construction company, and they wanted to offer 1 liter of safe, clean drinking water for every dollar they sold. And then they would give a plaque to the as they did the ribbon cutting kind of thing. And they said that's been just amazing for corporate culture and with their clients.
No kidding.
And then on the side for the last several years, I've done some coaching and consulting and speaking on happiness in the workplace and workshops and retreats and things. That's kind of my new gig.
Yeah. Well, and success, because you were the chair of the Global Student Entrepreneur Association Awards. Sorry. And
yeah,
that's actually how you and I met. And then I took
that's
over.
how I roped you in.
You roped me in. I knew I was roped in when you gave me all that stuff out of your garage. You know, here's the signs, here's the papers, here's the boxes. I was like, oh damn.
Exactly.
Oh, damn. But I remember something about you from a long time ago. Is you started delivering stuff from Costco.
Yeah.
Wasn't there a picture of you on like in the Costco magazine or on it, something like that?
Yeah, many moons ago. That's where we started actually. So with some trucks delivering fridges and stoves for Costco. So I mean, now today, it's Instacart does work with Costco now, and that's kind of basically the same business model. Sometimes I kind of kick myself. I'm like, wow, Instacart's a multi-billion-dollar company, and basically I was doing that 20 years ago. So
yeah,
ahead of my time. So.
Yeah, but you started hard scrabble. I mean, you just started with a firm attitude and a great work ethic and a van.
Yeah, it's just hustle. That's like one of the number one things and I'm sure all the listeners, right? They get it. Anybody that's running a company, and if you started from scratch, or even if you inherited it from your parents or something like that, I mean, it's not as easy as it sounds. It's not as glamorous as it sounds.
No.
Right? So.
Well, today we're going to talk about how you sold it. I mean, there's so many stories, and you're a great storyteller, folks. As you're listening, Calvin's an awesome storyteller. He was just set to do a round the world cruise, not really cruise, sail. You're going to
Cruise.
sail. It wasn't a cruise. You were crewing
Ocean
on a
racing. Yeah.
ocean racing. You do overland off-roading in your
Yeah.
Jeep, and you like to do out your Jeeps. Pretty nice.
Yeah.
But today, let's talk about your experience here. You know, you've built a company, you sold it. What did you learn? So let's take us, the people listening here, some are interested in selling, some are still in the build mode. But I think the lessons that you shared with me over drinks the other day are pretty important. What did you learn in selling your business? What do I need to know, or what would you do different if you went back in time?
Yeah, I mean, there's just a ton I can share right now. But just to your point there, even for listeners that don't think they're ready to sell, then the opposite. Maybe they're in acquisition mode. It's the same process. That if you're going to go out and acquire some other company, maybe you're a roofing company and you got great systems and you're going to roll up some other roofing companies in the area that, kind of suck. Sometimes it's easier to buy them. Maybe they're ready to sell. So it's the same process, whether you're on the buying side or the selling side. So that's what I kind of learned, and put some notes down here, that it was painful. I tried to absorb as much as
talking to you. You've got a full head of hair, but it would have been falling out if that was the time.
Yeah, exactly. So, one of the first things that, as I started to build a team around me, I'll get into the people that you kind of need, is, especially on the selling side, a lot of people would ask me, why do you want to sell, and what do you want to do after? I thought it was kind of weird. And
who was asking you that, though? The potential buyers, or just people on the street?
No, that would be like lawyers, accountants, M&A firms, that kind of team that you're trying to build. What I realized that they were getting to is that only about 30% of businesses that actually want to sell.
Well, because they're not viable. They don't have a real business.
High expectations. They change their mind. They haven't talked to their family. Something else happened. They don't realize that you just can't snap your fingers and sell your business. This is you got to start just 2 or 3 years in advance. If you want to get premium dollars, if you're desperate, COVID, can't make payroll in 2 weeks, that's a fire sale. That's
you're going to take a lot less for you.
Yeah.
Calvin, you mentioned a team. You're putting your team together. Who needs to be on your team? You just went through this. You're probably still talking to that team.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, even before you get a team, everybody's going to tell you anyways. You need to be looking 2 to 3 years out. This is strategically, if you think, hey, I'm going to sell, whether you sell to your employees, whatever, that the number one thing that I learned, and even I got late to the party, was that focus on your sales and your EBITDA.
What's EBITDA? Because people might not know that.
Earning before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization.
Yeah, and I can find, my accountant can tell me that. It's in my books.
Yeah, exactly. That's your, let's just quotation. That's your bottom line. That's your right. But it's your earnings. Before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization. That's the number that is going to be useful later when people say, hey, I'm going to buy you for a multiple of. It could be a multiple of sales, but a lot of times it's multiple of EBITDA. That's the true cash bottom line number.
Yeah. Okay. Now, a lot of people don't think about EBITDA, but again, if I'm going to buy your business and I know how much profit it spits out in a year, I want to value that and say, I'll pay for 4 years of this guy's future earnings. And in the 5th year, I'll start to make my money back because I know he's making money. Yeah.
Every industry. So, a construction company compared to an e-commerce company, usually you can go out and pretty easily Google and find out what it's called, multiples. Multiple. So what do other roofing companies or plumbing companies, what's the multiple that they sell for? 4 times, 10 times, whatever. Right. Yeah. So why that's important is, start building your sales, streamlining your business, build up your EBITDA, because every dollar of EBITDA times the multiple is the money in your pocket.
Right.
So if you're able to
$1 in profit and
you're at 10 times, exactly. So, hey, this year I increased my EBITDA by 10%. Well, if you're doing a 10 times multiple when you sell, that was 10 times. So it's the easiest no-brainer money in your pocket.
So perfect. So sorry to cut you off. Where were you going next on this? What I need to do 2 or 3 years out before I sell?
Yeah. So the next one is to start shortlisting your buyers. Figure out who is going to buy me. The better you can kind of figure out, what decisions do you want to make sure they're in the direction of the people that potentially are going to buy you and not congruent to that. If you're, I don't know, let's use roofing companies because you keep talking.
Sure. Yeah.
And you decide to get into windows. But the big roofing companies in town, I wish that guy would buy me, but he doesn't do windows. So if in the next couple of years you got into doing windows and he doesn't do windows, then it becomes difficult in doing a deal
because he doesn't that buyer doesn't understand the window side of the business.
They'll just discount it, or actually they might just get scared and walk away. So if some people will build a business to sell, they already know the day they opened their bank account that I'm building this to sell. So keep that in mind. But look everywhere for potential buyers. What's really hot right now is private equity. Private equity is just, people that gather a whole bunch of money together and they buy businesses. But a lot of times what they're doing is they're rolling up businesses. Maybe they want to come into the California market and buy up 100 roofing companies and put it all under a brand or something like that. So you might get lucky. Or if you don't get picked, then now you have this monster competitor in California because you didn't get picked to be one of the lucky few, so to speak.
And what I like about what you're saying here is you're picking big potential buyers. You're not saying, I'm going to sell to Joe down the street, because the answer to Joe down the street is
yeah.
But the end answer to big guy that's rolling up 100 companies in California is whatever the sound angels make when the heavens open up and angels blow their trumpets.
Yeah, like let's think about your business like a house, and a property developer comes in and says, "I want to buy up the whole street," they're sophisticated buyers. They already know what their pricing is. Yeah. I mean, they might offer you something and you say, "Hey, I'm not in." But maybe you hold out and then all your neighbors sell and then they have to come back and pay you more. That kind of story, right? Yeah. That's kind of a roll-up idea. If you have some guy that lives in an apartment today and has a part-time job and he knocks on your door and says, "I want to buy your house," it's
going to be down to the pennies.
Yeah, it's not the same type of deal. So a good rule of thumb, at least that I found, was I sold for less than 10 million, but deals over 10 million get done a lot differently too. Deals below $1 million, they're really just small potatoes potentially. As far as building out a team, I mean, sometimes small deals can be done very, very quickly. Yeah. Big deals are usually with big buyers. But most businesses, I don't know about your listeners, but most businesses, they're breaking the $1 million. And hey, if you get past,
that's why they listen to the show. They listen to this. I mean, you saw the title of the book, right? Construction Millionaire Secrets.
Exactly. So if you have a $2 million or $3 million or $4 million business, something like that, and you're thinking about selling, a strategy that I tried and burned up a bit of time and then hit COVID is I tried to do a roll up. I tried to go to a few of my competitors and say, "Hey, let's pool together,
right?
And we can create a $15-20 million company." And the big boys out there,
the big nationals,
they're in acquisition mode already. We know they are. They're moving all through the states. They're moving to. They're buying, gobbling up. They're coming our way. Let's pool together, and then our EBITDA will be much larger, and we can ask for a lot more. Because usually a little bit bigger buyer that's buying you wants something that's a little bit more turnkey. In my case, what saved the day for COVID, our sales had already tanked and, we were in the shitter. But luckily a Fortune 500 company, came into our area and just wanted to buy up a select group to open in our area. Yeah. So they were going to, they had already got about an 80,000 square foot warehouse and it was empty. And they
so they knew they were going to buy to fill it.
Oh yeah, they just went bing, 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 and then bought up several plates. So without that, I would have been toast. So, but luckily for me, I think two things. One, we had great systems and great culture. They took all our people because we had fantastic culture. It's kind of my hobby on the side, right?
Yeah.
And I understood already how deals get done. And so when I talked to their M&A people, their acquisition team, their CEOs, I was able to talk that language.
Great.
So that's some of the stuff I wanted to try and share today.
Let's get to that. Yeah,
without that, I would have been just,
Tank.
puking up whatever or running around wondering. I just say all the wrong stuff. And so this is just kind of the game plan. So anyway, so now you've kind of figured out who you want to kind of sell to.
Yeah.
You're doing this 2-3 years out. Then the next thing to do is get a quality accountant. It's not your brother and he's using QuickBooks or something like that. You need a real accountant, a third-party accountant that is outside the business.
Mm-hmm.
And make sure that you have something. You don't need audit statements, but one below audit statements is a review engagement financial. So it does cost more, yes. But if you're trying to get a deal done, especially with somebody larger, you can't have.
You can't have hokey books.
Notice to reader. You can't have notice to read. It's just not going to work, and that'll scare people off. And if you're using some really basic accounting system, that could scare them off too.
Yeah.
But more important, I found the two people I had on my team that made me the money. So my accounting stuff solid. Make sure it's just solid. Was a tax accountant. You need a specific M&A tax accountant.
Separate than your regular accountant or in the same firm?
It's entirely different. So a specialized M&A tax accountant, and they will guide you on. Most people think, hey, I want to do a share sale. A share sale is in my best interest for taxes. The buyer wants to do an asset sale so they don't have any liabilities and whole nother topic. But I was really stuck. I'm like, well, absolutely. If somebody approached me with an asset sale, I'd say, no, I don't want to do that. I want a share sale. I want to get on my tax, but after being educated, especially with the tax accountant, they're like, don't worry about it. They got the shells, right?
It's amazing. I know. Okay, people, you just heard it here. Tax accountants know how to use these shell companies. They know how to set you up for the win because taxes is, if you pay full tax on the sale, you're a fool and you did it wrong. A tax accountant knows how to maneuver all those little rules and put them in your favor and split up the money. It's all legit, but it's making the most, it's pushing the boundaries. It's making the most of tax legislation, which they're experts in. The same as you're experts in whatever trade you are, they're an expert at their trade. Would you say that it's worth the money to have that tax accountant, or could you skip it over?
Oh, I'm still dealing with the tax accountants now post-sale for the next couple of years in how to get the money out of the company. We ended up doing an asset sale. So I still own the company. I still own the shares of my company, which is kind of good because I have fleet insurance and I have my gas and I have, health benefits and things. There's no sales going through the company right now, but for the next 2-3 years, the company is able to peel off dividends and man, I have no idea how this all works. They just give me bullet points on what to do. I know on the 15th, I've got to transfer money over and I got to do this. And I'm like, okay.
That's your only job right now is wait for the 15th and do it.
I've got a bunch of money in brokerage accounts that I set up through the company. And then, the money account, I don't know.
Well, let's move on from the accountant side, because I know that's not the only. So we've got the accountant and then we have a tax accountant. So
tax accountant. Super quickly, talk to a financial planner if you don't already have one. What are you going to do with all these funds once they drop in your lap post sale? I've been reading a couple books right now on that some people get like paralyzed or they freak out. They don't have a plan in place. They're like, okay, I was able to cash out. Now I'm afraid I'm going to lose it all. I put it in the market and then the market tanks or something. And I just blew my brains out after 20 years of work.
This is probably I would say for almost everybody listening, this will be the biggest transaction you do in your life. Next to, if you sell a house in San Francisco or Vancouver or Hong Kong or Sydney, maybe that'll be bigger. But listen, this is going to be the biggest transaction. You're going to get a bunch of cash. What
Yeah.
you do with that cash, again, there are experts who can guide you on how to get the best returns. What's the safest place to put it? How to take care of your family, how to take care of your family after you're gone, as we say.
Absolutely.
Yeah, a lot of stuff.
And this system is not set up like selling a house, and buying land and doing real estate deals. Everything in here is smoke and mirrors, and like everybody's not against you, but it's just nobody's there to openly share. And as you see, you need all these people, and none of them really talk to each other. You have to go build this
team. You got to
team.
pull them together. Yeah.
And the financial planner, he doesn't know anything about tax accounting. A caveat to all of this is, chances are don't get referrals that, the financial planner says, I know a great tax accountant. Yeah, I don't know. Like you got to do a lot of due diligence.
That's why you need 2 to 3 years.
The best that I did, and I ended up finding some great people, was I went back to, I'm part of EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, that you are also. I'm sure you've talked about that. And I just went back to people that sold, and of course asked them exactly what I'm sharing with you guys.
Yeah, who'd you use?
And then said, who did you use? And you'd be shocked how many times they said, oh, I had this M&A lawyer and he freaking sucked. I got more, don't ever use that guy. I'm like, doesn't anybody have a good one? So which leads me to the next one. I'd say probably the key person, at least for me in my deal. And I was so lucky. Thanks, Cam, friend of mine that owns a recruiting company, was finding me an M&A lawyer. So yes, I have 2 different lawyers that I've used out the years. I got one that's like trademarks lawyer, and I've got one that's my general lawyer. And sure, if you called them up and said, hey, I'm going to sell my business.
Yeah. I have a question for you, just because people listening might not know this. What does M&A stand for? What's an M&A lawyer?
Yeah, mergers and acquisitions.
Right.
Mergers.
So we're not just talking about your traffic court lawyer or your friend who does drunk driving acquittals. You're talking about a lawyer that knows how to sell and buy businesses, and that knows how to work with the tax accountant.
Yeah. And an M&A lawyer is not going to be a good lawyer for doing property deals.
No.
So any of your listeners that are doing, land roll-ups and whatever, like that's a specialty lawyer too. So again, you need very specific lawyer. Yeah. And luckily I found this guy, and I was given some great advice too when I interviewed him, is make sure that you pick the right style of lawyer.
Interesting.
This is the person that's going to be doing the heavy lifting negotiating. A lot of people think it's going to be like the M&A people I'll get to next. Yeah. But what I found was this was the key guy. This is the guy that's going to be negotiating on your behalf. He's going to call you up 1,000 times as the deal gets close, and he's like, okay, what are we going to do about that? What's your position? But the lawyer themselves, a lot of times they default to being very aggressive, very combative, but you don't want somebody to be a pushover and be too amicable to kind of get a deal done.
You need a business person, a deal maker.
Yeah, you need a deal maker that also fits with you. And also, so what I had to do with this M&A lawyer is, as we got down to the final strokes, is I had to kind of almost get him to call off the dogs, because he was getting a little bit too aggressive, and they just want to fight for every inch of land. And I'm like, but on the other side too, it's like, okay, let's negotiate. Let's pretend we want this, this whole negotiating thing. Let's pretend we want this, but we really want that. Right. Yeah. But anyways, it turned out, because that was the person I spent the most amount of time with, was the M&A lawyer. Huh. But don't scrimp on that. To do a mid 7-figure sales deal, my bill was over $50,000. And that was kind of cheap, actually.
And you don't know, and I don't know how much he or she saved you, and we don't know how much they made you, because one loophole in the tax legislation, one loophole in the way the contract was written, not loophole, one positioning makes you that 50 grand, makes you 100 grand at a time, saves you $25,000 here that you and I will never know about, but they do it all day long.
Absolutely. When you get down to the brass tacks in their negotiating, if it's somebody that just doesn't understand I was dealing with an acquisition team and legal from a Fortune 500 company. And
that's a good point. That's a good point. So Calvin, at the very beginning, you said make a list of your strategic buyers who you think could buy you. Well, folks, if you're listening to this, the buyer that's willing to pay you extra for your company has their own team on their side. They have their own accountant.
Yeah.
They have their own lawyers. So if you try to go into that and you're trying to sell to Joe down the street as if you're Joe down the street, they're kind of going to eat you up. Just like you've done, Calvin, you got to set up your team.
Yeah, behind the scenes, most of the people I talked about, the tax accountants, things like that, they're all behind the scenes, right? The M&A lawyer, he's representing you. He could be in meetings and on the phone a ton without you. So making sure you're picking that one.
Love it.
So finally, the last part, which was kind of a bit of a lunch bag letdown for me, was an M&A, so mergers and acquisition firm. So think of them as like a recruiter or a realtor. As you see, I'm already watering down.
I know. I think of them as like a realtor for businesses.
You know?
Yeah, they have a place and they can help us, but you got to find the right one.
Exactly. So, I mean, these are not lawyers. These are not accountants. A lot of people make the mistake in thinking that they get, on the low end, it would be called like a business broker. Mm-hmm. On a high end, it would be an M&A firm. So depending on the size of the deal. So our deal was under 10 million, but luckily through another friend, we were kind of referred to them and they took us on. And I think we were it's a funny position because you don't want to be with the broker because the broker, they're basically like a realtor for sure. They're just like putting on a website and shopping it around. M&A firms could be doing deals in the hundreds of millions. So are we going to get the love really? And as it turned out, I don't think we really did. I think most of the stuff just got passed off to their junior people and put it in a bunch of templates. And then they just spray and pray and send it out. Although I did give them the list of strategic buyers that we said to approach.
Okay. So
in the end, that's who bought us.
Yeah,
right.
Perfect.
But they threw it all out there. So they're going to charge anywhere between 5% to sometimes as high as 25% of the deal. Depending on the circumstance. Oh, yeah. They're going to charge way more than like potentially all the rest of your team.
Yeah.
So it's good to keep that in mind.
Well, and people get afraid. They're like, well, I don't want to hire them then. They're going to take profit from me. But I do have to say, when you do have a good broker, they also know how to get you the best. They know how to keep that deal alive. They know how to keep the buyers engaged. There's a value there, but yeah, they charge for their value. Yeah,
they're definitely going to, it's just like, I'm sure everybody sold a house, right? I mean, our house next door to us and it sold in a day. Well, what did they do? Like, I'm sure they got their full commission, right? So what did they do?
Yeah.
But a broker or an M&A firm or something, they are going to get the word out. Depending on the size of your deal, it is going to help. So you kind of do need them, or you could try and do it yourself. So what ended up happening with me is I worked with an M&A firm, and we kind of did the first round pre-COVID. Didn't quite get a deal done and kind of backed off a little bit because again, here's this 30%. I thought I was motivated to sell, but then pulled the deal off the table because we weren't quite getting the multiples we were looking for. And thought, okay, I'll just wait another year. We were ramping on sales. Things were looking good. I said, oh, snooze, you lose. I'll just wait another year or two. I'll come back to the market. Now it's going to cost you more.
Yeah. Well,
COVID.
Yeah. And you were a service business, and that service business relied on having people on site. So COVID put a dent in that, at least huge.
Yeah. Huge. So anyway, so now you've got all these people in place, and this is still 2-3 years out. Now you need to tidy up all your stuff internally, clean up any litigations, any lawsuits, any employment issues, get rock solid employment agreements in place. That's going to come back to bite you later if you don't. Don't take on any more partners and give out shares and stuff like that, and start. The hardest part for me, it took a while, was to unwind all the extra spending, leases on vehicles and extra holidays, because you want to bolster your EBITDA. And also, remember, this is going to be open in the kimono when it comes down to the buyer. They're going to want to see everything, every single line.
So I've got a question for you, because behind you in the background, for people who are hearing this as an audio, Calvin and I are recording this for video as well. And in your background, I see scaling up, which is a strategic planning system. Did you put all this on paper? Like, did you have a plan you were working to that said, we got to clean up old leases? We have to clean up, extras we're spending here and how much we're doing for, whatever office cleaning, cut it from daily to twice a week, those kinds of things.
Yeah, absolutely. Knowing that, every dollar EBITDA times your multiple equals money in your pocket too. But also that a buyer, and this was from the M&A firm and other people saying, hey, you got to tidy all that up. You can't be like pumping through, giving money to your brother because he's no job.
I know. Pizza on Fridays you can't have that.
Yeah. So, I mean, my wife had a car. We had just a lot of extra spending. I mean, hey, we're all, entrepreneurs, man. So you just, you're funneling through everything you can. Tax is terrible. Why bother making any profit at the end of the year, right? I ran that way for many, many years. And now it's like, oh shit, like, okay, I can't like put my sailing trips through the company anymore. Because it's just, you're going to have to justify it later. And it just doesn't look.
And it's going to cost you money.
It's going to cost you money later. Because then you're going to say, oh, well, my EBITDA is not that great, but let's remove all these things. Yes, it is an exercise to go through, but it just puts
and serious buyers don't like that.
Yeah, exactly.
They're saying you're not running a serious business.
Yeah.
Did your staff start to know that you were making changes and say, hey, what's going on? Are you selling? Or how did that come about?
Yeah. So this was probably the scariest part too, that what are you going to do? Announce all of a sudden, even to your leadership team or something that, hey, my wife and I, my wife worked with me. That's a whole nother story. I mean, it was good, but having your wife work with you.
Yeah.
And I'll share that for a podcast another time. So
we'll bring you back for that one, but we might not be able to record it.
Yeah. Sandy. Yeah. But there was a huge stress. I was like, what the hell? How am I going to do this? Like,
well, if I tell them and they leave, or if I tell them and they tell somebody else.
Basically we're saying, hey, Sandy and I are just going to sell the business.
Yeah.
So somebody gave me some unbelievable advice that I ended up using. He said, just hide it in plain sight. I go, what does that mean? And he said, well, I mean, you are theoretically trying to do some acquisitions to grow before you sell. We're trying to buy up some smaller players, right? Nice. So that is already part of our strategic planning. Hey, we're going to buy this little guy over here, that guy over there. Just leave out the part of once we've got it all, I'm going to go to market and sell.
Oh, so you start getting your team used to the fact that, hey, we're ready to go buy some other companies. In order to do that, we've got to have clean books. We've got to have systems in place. We got to be ready to integrate them.
Yeah, we might have people coming through and doing tours.
We might have people on site.
An M&A firm. The M&A firm was, they're going to take a percentage, but also there was a retainer, $5,000 a month retainer. How do I put that through my books without my finance people knowing, right? So I literally just said, hey, these guys are $5,000 a month and they're going to help us do some acquisitions. Oh, okay. So, I need a tax accountant because okay.
Right. And so suddenly the office gossip or the shop gossip didn't matter because
it was all about, hey, this is, we're going to, acquire some companies, we're going to grow and things like that. And so that took a huge stress off because you're right. If you say, hey, you know what, I've kind of been doing this long enough. I think we're going to sell, especially in today's job market. It's like they're gone.
Well, hey, paint us a picture real quick so people understand. How big was your space? How many employees did you have in the warehouse?
We're about 40 people, 18,000 square feet, fleet of like 8 trucks and so we were e-commerce company, doing office supplies and office coffee, but we had huge assets too in coffee equipment and, all that fancy push button stuff. So we did that in office. So we were a service business and we were everything.
I remember coming for a tour of your office and warehouse once, and it was all done out in like a tiki bar theme. It was like Jimmy Buffett had glanced over the place and said, it shall be so.
Yeah, exactly. That's back to my love of corporate culture. And so we just created an amazing space.
But a lot of that goes to the positioning, the amazing space, the culture, the values of talking to your team. And so you're still going to talk to them. What you're going to do though, is position it properly and say, we might be buying some other companies.
Exactly. Yeah, I've always found, we over communicated, back to what we were talking about on the wall there, whether it's Traction or Rockefeller Habits, two great books that really dive deep into communication and huddles. And I have always found that I'll give you a tip that for any business, all your listeners out there, that if you had somebody come through a tour, so Dom, you came through as a tour, we walked through the warehouse, and I want you to say to anybody in my company, hey, what's going on? What's going on at this company here? Maybe they've only been there for a few weeks or something. And then the worst thing that you would want them to say is like, oh, the hell if I know. Like, nobody tells me anything, which I think is a lot of businesses. Instead, they had been to the 10:07 meeting, and we hold our meetings every Monday at 10:07.
10:07, yeah.
Kind of a goofy thing.
No, but that's makes it memorable, right?
Exactly. Yeah. That way.
And that's where they heard the numbers, what's up, where we're stuck.
All open book things. And so every month, every week, we'd be talking about here's what's happening with our acquisitions. Here's what we're doing. And so people don't get scared of wondering what's happening in the business. Right.
So let's push this forward now. We're just about ready to make the sale, 6 to 12 months out. What does that world look like?
So now you've built all that. You're kind of ready to go. You've talked with it. You're basically ready to put the for sale sign on your lawn.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
That's a scary time. So you need something called a CIM, a confidential information memorandum. So it's CIM, a CIM.
CIM.
And your M&A people will create this. It could be a one-page flyer. It could be a really detailed brochure. But anyways, it's the teaser to say, hey, we're for sale.
Right.
And so once you release that, maybe it circles back to your staff.
Yeah. What do you do then?
Well, then cat's out of the bag. So you could do this many different ways. You can create your CIM and then send it strategically just to a few buyers. Like, hey, we're going to open this to the market, but you're a big roofing company, and I know that in the last few years you've been trying to get into my market. I'm for sale. Boom, might be all it takes. Right. But you need something, you need this kind of, think of it just as a brochure, but the M&A company, you can do one yourself, you just Google it. And you can either put in that you're open to offers, or you could just set a price. And then also you'd have potentially a deadline for offers. So this is open, but we're only keeping this open for 30 days and you need to express interest.
Right.
So
yeah.
Throw that out there.
And that's where the M&A firm comes in with their marketing, their experience. They know who to call. They know how to nudge them. They know how to play games with the deadline. They know how to make these things come together. And
so, they should be calling everybody on your list, but maybe they have other people in their portfolio and they shop it around
yeah.
So
when you set that out, did your staff find out?
No, luckily, no.
Yeah. Stressful days.
And tied into that then too is NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, rock solid non-disclosure agreements. You can get your lawyer to set it up. Sometimes the M&A guys will have it. If the M&A guys give you a non-disclosure, not only a non-disclosure for people that are going to look at the CIM, but also non-disclosures for the M&A people too. So the M&A people might pull one out of their pocket and say, oh, here we've got our own. You say, yeah, I'll get my lawyer to look at that. Thanks. And so that
you were very calculated in this. You didn't go into this half-assed. You went into it with a plan.
And most of this stuff I'm sharing now took me a couple of years to even gather this information. I didn't know what this stuff was or when you needed or who had it.
It's hard to know, but
it's hard to know. So the other thing that you need to do 6 months out or so is build a data vault.
Data vault.
I'll tell you what this is. This was huge. In just in Dropbox. I mean, the M&A people gave me this list of. It took a few months to prepare this.
It's incredible the documents they need to sell the business.
And this is where a good M&A
find things that never got signed, documents you can't find anymore because you started in the 80s and it was all paper based.
Yeah, your lease, any contracts, trademarks, and make sure your taxes are up to date. Like, oh my God, it was unbelievable. But it paid off when it came time to get down to brass tacks.
Yeah.
So now you're building your data vault, and that took a lot of time, and that one was hard because our finance team, especially, they're like, "What do you need that for?" Oh, we're just organizing. Can I have the last 5 years of it? What? What do you need that for?
Well, because we're going to need that to go to the bank to make sure we qualify to buy this next company.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. How important, I know this isn't, this is on the side. I'm thinking about the support you need as an owner. How important were those admin staff, the support staff, the bookkeeper, the people who worked in your company?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Because you need to put this stuff, you can't go do this. You're still running the business.
Yeah. Actually, you brought up a good point I'm going to talk about too, is so first, on the admin side, like having great reporting, having good systems already. That's another side note I thought of too. Don't go and try and set up a new ERP system or new accounting software and things, the year before you're going to sell.
No,
that's murder in itself.
That's a 2-year process there. Yeah. Did you guys use a dashboard? Did you track your key numbers, from your strategic plan in a dashboard?
Yeah. We were on the Rockefeller kind of scaling up side, and then we moved to Traction. I'm sure you talked to your guests about this.
Traction is also called EOS, folks. You've heard me talk about
EOS. So we moved over to EOS Traction, which I think it's just easier.
It's more simplistic. Here's what I say the difference between Traction and scaling up is. With scaling up, I have to take stuff out. There's a lot of information in there, and that can make it confusing.
Yeah.
With EOS, I have to add stuff in, but that can make it confusing to people. They say, well, where's this? I'm like, it's okay that it's not there. I've got it on the side. I'll pull it in as needed, but it's less intimidating to a business owner to say, oh, there's just these 5 things Dom is going to work with me on. There they are.
Yeah.
Boom, boom, boom.
Can you get through the 5 things already? Can you set up your sequence of events and your rhythm already? Like, if you exhaust, Traction or EOS, then there's more to add, but most people can't get past that. So
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Having good reporting and things in place and a good admin.
Good people. So did you have good admin?
Yeah. Great people, great team. And so when we did the sale, I didn't have to pay any severance. Part of the negotiation was that the buyer literally took all my employees.
So good.
And
I remember you calling me about your warehouse guy saying, look, he's top notch. Do you know anybody?
Yeah.
I thought everybody.
They ended up taking everybody that wanted to be taken.
Sure.
Yes, a few people opted out. They didn't want to. And we just gave them working notice and didn't need to pay them any severance.
So good.
But also during the negotiation, and they went through our list, and we didn't have people's names even. We just said employee 1, warehouse, employee 2, salesperson, right? And how much they made. And they said, okay, I'll take all your salespeople. I'll take all your drivers. I'll take all this. And we had the legit numbers that we paid the people. And it was my lawyer that said, make sure they all get raises. But because they have, my employees have the right to refuse, right? So he said, well, just make sure they all get raises. And I go, oh.
From you or from the buyer? That the buyer is.
No, the buyer. So the buyer is going to now offer, if the buyer offers a job, kind of an offer letter kind of thing. There's some legal thing or something. If they offer it and they refuse, I don't have to pay severance too. I can't remember how that'll work. But,
okay.
But anyway, so they said, okay, we'll take all these people. And so my lawyer had said that, and I went back in the negotiation and said, well, if you want these people to come over, like, you're going to have to give them an increase. Like, we were planning on doing some big increases anyway. So here's the numbers I think these people should be paid, especially because we're a small business and you're a big conglomerate, right? You can afford it.
Yeah.
And so I think we tacked 20% onto everybody. So
well,
and they just took it. And of course, everybody went, because we had to sit down. We're right down to the wire now, right? We literally have signed a deal and said, hey, Terry, my driver has been with me 23 years. And
oh gosh,
Terry, this is what's happened. Like, I had that conversation, like, I don't know, 20 times. Right? Yeah. One by one, we brought people in, and I slide it across the table and I say, here, you need to sign this. This is.
And by the way, you got a raise.
And by the way, if you look right here and you get, full benefits and you get blah, 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 and you get this. And oh, by the way, you're going to be driving your same truck because they bought our trucks, doing the same route, delivering the same stuff. He's like, okay.
But for 20% more.
And then
awesome.
I stay in touch with some of the staff, and it's such a shit show over because they've bought a bunch of companies and rolled them into this 80,000 square foot warehouse that the guys are doing like 3-4 hours a day in overtime. So he's like tickled pink.
Yeah. But so what's important here, and I want everybody to understand this, Calvin, you took care of your people. Even though there were times you were gray about what we're telling them, what we're doing, at the end of it all, you've always been this guy. You take care of the people on your team.
Biggest stress. Yeah. We don't want to just parachute out, especially during COVID and stuff, and not take care of our people. So that's always a very stressful part of the negotiation, right?
Wow.
But luckily, turned out good. So we're kind of home stretch, if we had to go through the timeline that you send out this sim, and now that probably the scariest part is like crickets chirping, right?
Yeah. What if we had a party and nobody showed up?
You've gone through all this work. And you send it out to people, and then they get this sim, and then maybe the M&A guys are following up and saying, so did you get it? What'd you think? Yeah, we'll pass. And that's when I tried this 2-3 years prior. There wasn't quite the appetite, or wasn't quite right, and we did have some interest, but it came in kind of low. So we kind of parked it. So this was like, especially with COVID and things, we're like, we've got to sell. I was way more desperate than the buyers led on, but luckily there was this one Fortune 500 buyer, and they had a huge war chest, and I ended up talking to the CEO directly. I have to caveat that the second time during COVID, going back to the market, I didn't use my M&A company.
I understand you went on your own, because
I just went on my own, talked to my wife. I said, we got to freaking sell this thing. Like, we're going to be toast if this thing, and thank God, because look at Omicron, like it just keeps going and going. And I called up the one CEO, and I said, hey, we're back on the market. And he goes, oh, okay, I'll take you.
So, really? He was ready to go.
Yeah, they had bought some others, and we didn't quite fit the bill originally 2-3 years ago, but now he was ready.
So this is an important thing to remember, and it looks like you've uncovered it as well. Somewhere there's a big company who's got their own dashboard that says, we need to buy this many companies with this much distribution, with this much EBITDA, which you've already explained for us today, with this much in sales that is in this market. And that could be your market. You are somebody else's to-do list.
You nailed it. You totally nailed it. I didn't even realize that until almost after the deal, that we learned that the CEO was given $50 million a year to do acquisition, to go buy stuff.
Yeah.
And the first time he said no is he bought my friend's company in the same space, and he had just run out of money. He just, and we were a little bit slightly different, still basically the same, but had a little bit of tweaks here and there. And so we didn't quite fit the bill. So it was kind of a pass the first time. But then as we came around, and he had his new war chest for the year, and he's like,
ready to go. And
he's okay.
So the fish is flopping in the boat. He just had to smack it with the oar.
And he has an acquisition team that's just sitting there twiddling their thumbs, waiting for, give me some.
He looks like the hero. I pulled this deal out of the fire. I found this great deal.
Yeah. And his goal for that 80,000 square foot distribution center was to get that to, I think it was $30 million within 24 months through acquisition.
Interesting. So interesting you say that. So your number, you're just a tick mark on a dashboard.
I'm just a French fry on the plate. I don't know.
Hey, listen, I want to save some time today to get to your construction work in Nicaragua, which is pretty cool as well. But can you summarize this whole, if you summarized everything you learned about selling your business, whether it came from how you started it, how you built it, the moves you made, what would be your just quick summary of that whole thing?
Prepare in advance. Takes way longer than you think. Educate yourself. I mean, especially if you're the owner or the CEO, like this needs to be your full-time job, in educating yourself to understand how the game is played. You just don't want to step on the field. I mean, the same selling your house, right?
How does rugby work? Go stand on the field and figure out.
Imagine you be the guy standing on the field, and then you just come by and boom,
like a herd of buffaloes.
Exactly. That there's just a ton of little little details. If I can kind of wrap it up, that make sure that you really are ready to sell and your family is really ready. I'd say here's the final tip, that don't forget that there's a lot of other people involved in this decision, and not just your employees and things too, that it's a massive life change for your family. And especially if you're going to retire, I mean, sometimes that's where all the divorces happen, isn't it? You're at home and then the wife's like, I don't like you this much. I like you about 8 hours a day. And so I'll leave it with something that I shared with you over beers that you hadn't heard of, that is my 2022 planning kind of template. And it's this idea of everybody having these 5 hobbies. Have 5 hobbies in life. If you have these 5 hobbies, you will, chances are you'll be a lot happier. Have one hobby that makes you money. Have one hobby that keeps you in shape. Have one hobby to stay creative. Have one hobby to build knowledge. And one hobby to evolve your mindset.
Whoa.
So if you can put whatever you do into those buckets, sometimes they overlap, then, I thought it was kind of a cool thing. So my wife and I are doing that for 2022. We just had
that is really interesting. And I hope the people listening, I would be honored if people thought listening to my podcast or any of these business building podcasts was part of number 5, which is evolve your mindset. So much of this is mindset. I remember, Calvin, and you and I don't talk every day, but I remember talking to you when times were dark. But your mindset has never changed. You're still the same guy that had a hand dolly in a van and said, I'm going to deliver stuff to people from Costco. And you built a multi-million-dollar business, employed 40 plus people, and then you sold it at the height of the worst time in the economy for that kind of business. Exactly.
And, for your listeners too, just remember that I think 90% of businesses fail in the first 5 years. So if anybody listening there has been in business 5 years,
thank you.
It's just unbelievable. And then to take a business and sell it, you're in like the 1% of the 1%. And so educating yourself now on how this process works, even if you don't want to do it for another 20 years, or maybe you want to start acquiring companies, right? It's the same process. You're just on the other side of the table.
I want to add something to that. You said most businesses fail in the first 5 years. I think it was Peter Drucker, the famous business management guru. He deals with the IBMs of the world and Apple and stuff like that. I think he said most companies die of indigestion, and it's not having the strategic plan. And people listening, I hope you recognize the patterns that happen in this show. I've got Calvin here, who built a wonderful business with great people. He used a strategic plan. I talk about strategic plans all the time.
How can you not have
They're
it?
not sexy. They work.
It's your roadmap. I can't even fathom how to run a business without having some sort of strategic plan in place, and sharing that and having everybody rowing in the same direction. You got to have it. You have to have it. Right. Everyone makes their own, and it can all be different. It doesn't have to be by some book or something, but at least embrace some of it. If you're running by the seat of your pants every day, you might be
Life
part of that.
Never gets easier. It's Groundhog Day all the time.
Exactly.
Hey, let's switch gears. Thank you for that part, but I want to switch gears to this work you're doing in Nicaragua, this Club Need, which is water, but there's also a lot of construction you're doing down there. What are you doing there?
So within our company, we built a charity component, and what we offered was for every $1 that a customer bought from us, we would donate a liter of safe, clean drinking water. And for every piece of fruit that customers would buy, we would donate a piece of fruit to this food program. I kind of fell into, long story, but I fell into working in Nicaragua in an area called Cristo Rey, which is about 10,000 people that live around the outskirts of an open pit garbage dump. And every day they would go into the garbage dump with a broom handle with a hook on the end and hook through the garbage to find, I've seen people find half-eaten hamburgers and they start eating. I mean, it's a very, very poor part. I mean, Nicaragua is already one of the poorest countries behind Haiti. But outside of that, there's a lot of poverty there. So we kind of fell into, kind of helping out with a water program and a food program, but also a construction program in building very, very modest homes. But what these people around the outskirts of the garbage dump were living in was cardboard or the kind of waffle tin stuff. I'm sure there's a name for it, right?
Corrugated tin, yeah.
And when it would rain, they'd be living in mud and things. So the World Health Organization says one of the best ways to bring people out of poverty, obviously beyond the main sustenance, food and clean water, is shelter and dry shelter. So a roof over your head, a floor that's dry, and what I thought was funny was a door that locks. And in this area, this barrio that we were in, I thought it was kind of, when you first see it, that it was maybe like, take care of your neighbor. It was a happy kind of, everybody works together. It's like your most coveted possession usually is some sort of a cast iron frying pan that you would have on an open fire to cook something. If you walked away from it, they come over and steal it right away.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So you basically need somebody in your little area all the time, which of course causes a problem with going and getting a job or things like that.
Yeah. It's so simple, isn't it? Basic. It's
so with Club Need, I started with my friend Cam. It's more of a travel company in a way that we take down people that are a lot like your members or your listeners, I guess. Most of our clients seem to be professionals. A lot of times they'll bring their teenage kids, and we'll see the kind of beautiful country, but we spend a lot of time doing some home building, building these very modest homes, concrete floor. And funny enough, several times we've had owners of construction companies come down on a tour, and they are literally in heaven. I don't get it because I'm not, from the construction industry, but strapping on a tool belt and they're right in the mud, right in the thick of it, just right in the raw building.
It's how everybody started.
Exactly.
And they know it's their comfortable place, right?
Exactly. And it just loved it.
They can work with pride. They know how to make it work. There's no building code, I would imagine. That's why people smile. And
they're kind of cookie cutter. They're very modest. They're like 12 by 12, right? But we're pumping these things out. They cost about $1,000 to build. And, we get the stuff. And then there's, the Nicaraguan guys that, they built many of these homes. Like Paul, the one guy, he's like, if I could just take one of these guys back to my construction company and like clone him, this guy does like 50 times the work. It was unbelievable. 50-pound cinder blocks. And this guy's carrying 2 on his shoulders and stuff. Like, he's like, I've never seen work ethic like this.
Yeah.
And,
we take it for granted.
Usually a day's pay for these guys is $5 a day. We pay $25 a day to help them with building the homes. And it's just amazing. So, kind of wrap up this, what kind of came out of it was, let's use Paul as an example, $20 million construction company. And he said, hey, I dig everything that you're doing with your corporate culture. I'm trying to build my mission, vision, values, and create purpose for my employees. And I love this 1-for-1 water idea. I want to do it in my construction company. And I said, well, that's fantastic. Great. Because I don't know how to do this. I don't have the time. I don't know anything about Nicaragua and stuff. I said, I'll just give you all my marketing material. You can just change your logo at the top. And then I'll even come in and talk to your company and tell them what you've now are doing. Yeah. And then what Paul does is they calculate whatever their sales are, I guess. And he just sends a check to us, which we don't take any money. We just send it down to Pastor Carlos, who's in charge of the program down there. Yeah. And for him, the money goes directly towards safe, clean drinking water.
Wow.
And he's been doing it for a couple of years now. And I've got another plumbing company now that somebody just introduced me to. I got to go talk to. And so this Club Need thing, although we're doing the travel side, we're taking no money. We're not a charity. We're not anything. All we're doing is just forwarding the money down. but showing companies how easy it is to create a meaningful, charity. That the biggest benefit, I think, beyond the recipients in Nicaragua, the biggest benefit is creating purpose in your business, something beyond just, doing more roofs or something like that.
Right. So if you're a renovation contractor and you're up against a competitor and they say, why should we go with you? You're just the same as the other guy. So I don't know that we are. Here's this Club Need project we do where a portion of the profits go toward this. And, we've got a bigger, we're doing something bigger than just renovating kitchens and baths, which we love to do, but we have to remember people who don't, and you go into this, you're going to get that job. You're going to get the best jobs with the best clients who are willing to pay a bit of a premium because you're a bigger thinker.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, a thing I've been starting to do over the last few months now that I am, what did you call it? Not retired. What is it? Freedom?
Unencumbered.
Untethered.
Untethered. Untethered.
So anyways, that's been super, super exciting, but maybe for your listeners to give them an idea, it doesn't have to have anything to do with Club Need or us. I mean, you could just go find somewhere to create something similar.
Well, tell us, because let's start to wind this down. If somebody wants to find you in this wide world, if they want to find Club Need, how do we find more about Calvin?
Yeah, you just go to calvin@clubneed.org, calvin@clubneed.org. And my culture company, my coaching and culture research is calvin@workplacehappiness.com. calvin@workplacehappiness.com.
And that's Calvin with a C, folks, not with a
C.
Calvin with a C. Yeah.
Like Calvin and Hobbes. Yeah.
You are like Calvin and Hobbes. I could see you on that toboggan.
If I was going to get a tattoo, that'd be, I have no tattoos, but if I was going to get one, I think it'd be a Calvin and Hobbes tattoo. So.
Well, you could always, anyways. Hey, thanks for being on the show. I really appreciate it. Hopefully we have a chance to get you back one day. You've got a lot of stories. We've barely touched on any of them.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure. Anytime.
All right. Thanks, Calvin. Have a great day.
All right, bud.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Cheers.